Let's just breathe for a moment. Our theme this month of December 2013 is the you that's me. We often say that there's only one of us here. The you that's me. And our topic today is fresh new eyes. As we're approaching the holiday season, it's a wonderful opportunity. We do this interesting thing around the holidays. We space travel. The time-space continuum kind of ceases to exist in our normal linear kind of fashion. We can go from 50 to 5. 2 seconds flat. Back again, someplace else. It's amazing to see just how much stuff can be stored and held onto for decades. I often say that our experience is not what happens, it's our narrative of what happens. That's your experience. Your experience is the story that you tell yourself. And all therapeutic traditions, regardless of the modalities, are ultimately trying to get us beyond the narrative. They're ultimately trying to remind us that there's something within us that has never been hurt, harmed, hindered, endangered, that there's really underneath it all some innate goodness. My mentor, Reverend Michael Beckwith, used to always say that behind every human aberration is a spiritual aspiration. Behind every human aberration is a spiritual aspiration. That behind all of the negative and ugly things that we do as human beings, underneath it all, the intent of it is usually a spiritual aspiration. Underneath it all, the intent is usually something very spiritually basic, like trying to be safe, or trying to be whole, trying to be fulfilled, trying to be abundant, or prosperous, or approved, or belonging, or whatever that is. But when we do not know that that's who and what we are innately, then we externalize it, we objectify it, it becomes something that we try to chase after. And in the chase, we wind up doing all kinds of things to each other that doesn't acknowledge the fact that we're sacred beings. The only thing that ever needs to be healed is just a sense of separation. A sense of separation. We make the mistake and think that that sense of separation, once again, is external. That what I have to heal is the fact that I feel separate from you. Or what I have to heal is the fact that I feel separate from my abundance, or separate from my health, or this or that. The first place of separation is within you. You can't feel separate from somebody else unless there's some separation in you. I want you to really catch that. And we make the mistake and try to turn to people, places, and things for the sense of connectedness to try to convince us that that internal sense of separation that we have within our own selves doesn't exist. I'm trying to use you to fill up my hole. I want to use this relationship, or this thing, or that thing. And it's never filled up. And the blame game can go on forever. There is never a shortage of reasons for why you're not happy. There's never a shortage of reasons of everything that other people didn't do to fulfill your needs. There's absolutely no shortage whatsoever. And at some point, you have to just say, it is what it is. At some point, it just is what it is. Now what? Now what? What do you really want? Do you want to be happy, or you want somebody to make it up to you? I remember an experience I had, I don't know, it's been a while, could have been 7, 8 years ago. And it was Thanksgiving time. I'd gone into Los Angeles, and I don't remember the circumstances or why it was turning out this way, but I was spending the night at my brother's house. The first time in my life I had ever spent the night at my brother's house. And we got to talking, and I don't know exactly how the conversation got there, but it got to like old stuff. You know, like adolescent stuff, kind of thing. And there had been some stuff that I was holding on to. So we got to talking about it, and he looked at me with the most incredulous eyes, and he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "I did that?" Yeah, it did. Numerous occasions. And he just was like, "Really?" "Mm-hmm, yeah, really." And then he said the most incredible thing. He said, that would have been awful. Yeah, it was awful. And he had had surgery, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe 2-3 years before that. My family has some interesting things that goes on with hearts. And actually, all the firstborns who were males of my generation have all almost died. Some of them have from heart stuff already. So he said, when I went into that surgery, I asked God to forgive me of all of my sins. And I remember sitting there thinking, oh, no, he didn't. This dude done forgiving himself, for he done right by me. Check that out. It was like, how dare you? How dare you be healed and whole and forgiven, and you don't even remember? I can't even work it out with you because you don't remember? You've been so forgiven, you don't remember? This is Reverend Deborah, right? This is the 15-year-old pre-Reverend Deborah. I love that saying that every sinner has a future and every saint a past. So, and that worked me. It probably worked me 3-4 years. What was I going to do now? I have this narrative. What am I going to do now? And what do I really believe about forgiveness? He was demonstrating everything I ever preached about forgiveness. And I wasn't happy with it. Because it was not fulfilling my need. My ego's needs. He had these fresh new eyes. And I didn't appreciate his fresh new eyes. My mind was, it would have been okay for him to have those fresh new eyes after he had done right by me. And then I had to analyze that whole right by me thing. What's that? What's that? And what does that have to be about? And I realized in that moment, you are your father's son. Because my dad was doing the same thing. Just no recollection, this complete forgiveness. And I realized I had a choice. I want you to feel this now. I had a choice. Here was a man before me that was very loving. We're actually having to work together now because of these ailing parents. And he's actually a pretty good guy. I actually like this man. I didn't particularly care for him when we were kids, but this man I like. And this man is doing right by me now in every way that I could possibly want, and really bearing the brunt of the burden of what it meant to tend to our parents, because he still lives in LA. It's like, so what am I going to do? How important is my narrative? How important is my story? What am I going to do? Am I going to be right, or do I want to be happy? Because obviously my quest to be right, I was going to be right all by myself. Because there was nobody else home to even be in that party with me. And somewhere I decided to be happy. It just is what it is. It just was what it was. But it wasn't over till I let it go. Okay. So here I am, 50, still pissed off at some stuff at 15. So I kind of did the math. I sort of thought 35 years, that's long enough. But we get to decide. We get to decide whether it's 35 years, 35 months, 35 weeks, 35 days, 35 minutes, 35 seconds. We get to make that choice. The moment that we're willing to see with fresh new eyes. And I want to invite everybody to come on Thursday night as we pay tribute to Nelson Mandela. Because one of the things that I think was most extraordinary about him was the whole truth and reconciliation process he started in South Africa. And that's part of the reason why I've asked Dr. Catherine Byrne to help me facilitate that, not only as a native South African, but her doctoral dissertation was on the truth and reconciliation process. And I'm saying that to say that principles are principles, and it doesn't matter whether their application is in a what we think is small, micro, or personal individual context, or whether it's in a larger collective consciousness. They're not different sets of gravity. You know, the gravity that makes a baseball fall is the same gravity that will make a jetliner fall. There's not a different gravity whether it's big or small. The same powers, the same force, they're all operating the exact same way. There's not a different music for a kazoo or harmonica than there is for a symphony orchestra. There's not different art or colors for a kindergarten class than there is for, Picasso. It's all the exact same stuff. It's just different applications of it. And we forget that. We forget how the inner and the outer, the macro, the micro, they're all intertwined with each other. And we're never going to get anywhere until we're willing to work on both. Both. Most of us will err on one side or the other. We want to do the big global collective stuff, but we don't want to do the inner heart space work that it takes to get there. We don't want to be the stuff we're trying to get. We don't want to be the stuff we're trying to manifest. Or we're on the other end. We're so busy in our personal introspection and my own growth and my own healing and whatnot, we're not doing anything. You know, we're so... We become so self-absorbed in our privilege, even when we're thinking that we're oppressed, we're so obsessed with it that we're not recognizing that we can make a difference. You know, one of the first things they do in a 12-step program is get over yourself. Go do something for somebody else. Instead of sitting around worrying and crying and singing the blues and whatnot, just make a contribution. Go do something. You'll feel better about yourself when you start making a contribution. It works both ways. It works both ways. So when you're looking at your life and you're looking at these fresh new eyes are just that. They're new eyes. Let's just stick with me for a moment. There's a beautiful letter in the second volume of my Letters from the Infinite series, Your Deepest Intent. And I think I mentioned last week or so that Good Times has that out now as one of the holiday favorites, whatever it is, go buy it for the holiday thing. And I'm very pleased about that. And there's a letter in there called Clean Heart. And it's a spin-off from the scriptural passage in Romans, created me a clean heart and renew a right spirit within me. And it's a beautiful, beautiful thing on this clean heart. And I love the way it's described. It says, this clean heart that it's describing in the scripture is a new heart. It's not a improved, restored, polish it up. This word create is the same basic word that shows up in Hebrew in the Genesis. Like in the beginning, God created. That this kind of a clean heart is not a place we can get to on our own. Which is why in 12-step programs, there's always this stuff about surrender. And surrender, because your best thinking got you there. And you can't think your way out of it. You can't use all your own tools to help you transform. That you have to accept that there's a wisdom, there's a power, there's something that's bigger than you are. You got to trust your life to something that's bigger than you are. So a way that I love the way it described it. It said this clean heart, it described it as a heart transplant. It's like, are you willing basically to take your heart and lay it on the altar? And let me, through the alchemy of the divine refinery, the changing, the transformation, give you back something new. Because yours is full of junk. It's full of stuff. You don't even know how to clean it out. But are you willing to trade? Can you feel that? Are you willing to trade your anxieties? Are you willing to trade your fears for my joy? Are you willing to trade your anxieties for my peace? Are you willing to trade your dreams? As a spiritual counselor for many decades, one of the things that strikes me is that the last thing to go are our expectations. Long after the deed is done, long after the relationships have ended, people can be in the grave. Whatever, divorce final years ago. We don't even want to be in that relationship anymore. But what we're still holding on to is this expectation of what we thought it could have been. Are you with me? The what it could have been. And that's where the resentment and the bitterness comes in, that's junking up the heart, that's junking up our sight, that's junking up our eyes. It isn't even so much the grieving is not just grieving the loss of whatever it is we think we did have but don't have anymore, but grieving the loss of what we didn't get that we thought we should have gotten. Do you feel that? And that thing that we're holding on to is not just what went on, but it's our idea. And this new eyes, it's like this clean heart where we have to accept the fact that just like I said behind every human aberration is a spiritual aspiration, well, it's the same thing here. That behind every unrequited hope is a spiritual aspiration. That once again, we're looking to be whole. We're looking to be safe, secure, loved, valued, strong, whatever that is, creative. But we get stuck in our minds about how we think it has to happen. How? And if somehow or another we can, this holiday season, start this process of decoupling. I'm not asking you to let go of the vision of whatever, more powerful, more prosperous, more loving, more kind, more creative. Just don't get stuck in your idea of how you think it had to happen. Particularly if your idea is a script for how somebody else has to show up. A script of how the world has to show up, or what the economy has to be, or what the government has to be, or what your mate has to be, what your kids have to be, what so-and-so has to be. If we're willing to let that go and to see with some fresh, new eyes, possibility. Some fresh new eyes, not just look at you and see the story. Some of us are so stuck. Uncle so-and-so comes in the door, before they even hit the door, all you see is the story. You weren't even alive when the story was created. And you carried on the story about Uncle so-and-so. What if, and I remember the first Thanksgiving, I decided that I was going to go into the Thanksgiving dinner and see my family as spiritual beings. Oh, no! Oh, no! Try this at home. It was just amazing. I actually had a good time with these people. I didn't go prepared to fight. I didn't go with my story. It's like, okay, I'm just going to show up like I don't even know these folks. I'm just going to hang with them a little bit. And it was amazing what I saw when I went in with fresh eyes. And not the old stuff. We can do this in home. We can do this in the world. We can do this in the government. And I guarantee you that ultimately, this is the secret to world peace. We can't legislate it. We can't bomb it into being. there has to be a revolution of the soul, a revolution of our perspectives. But we can't do anything on the global level we don't dare to do in our own lives. So as cliche and as trite as it may seem at this time of the year, it is such a spiritual truth. Let there be peace on earth, and what? Let it begin with me. Let it begin with me. Let's take a deep breath.